This man rescued a wolf and her 4 puppies. 4 years later, she came back. When the mother wolf spotted the man, she stood erect. Possibly picking up the scent of her young, she let out a high-pitched, plaintive whine. He released the pups, and they raced to her. One spring morning many years ago, a man had been prospecting for gold along Coho Creek on southeastern Alaska's Kupreanof Island, and as he emerged from a forest of spruce and hemlock, the man froze in his tracks. No more than 20 paces away in the bog was a huge Alaskan timber wolf, caught in one of Trapper George's traps. Old George had passed the previous week due to a heart attack, so the wolf was lucky the man had happened along. Confused and frightened by his approach, the wolf backed away, straining at the trap chain. Then he noticed something else. It was a female, and her teats were full of milk. Somewhere there was a den of hungry pups waiting for their mother. From her appearance, he guessed that she had been trapped only a few days. That meant her pups were probably still alive, surely no more than a few miles away. But he suspected that if he tried to release the wolf, she would turn aggressive and try to tear the man into pieces. So, he decided to search for her pups instead and began to look for incoming tracks that might lead me to her den. Fortunately, there were still a few remaining patches of snow. After several moments, he spotted paw marks on a trail skirting the bog. The tracks led a half-mile through the forest, then up a rock-strewn slope. He finally spotted the den at the base of an enormous spruce. There wasn't a sound inside. Wolf pups are shy and cautious, and the man didn't have much hope of luring them outside. But he had to try. So he began imitating the high-pitched squeak of a mother wolf calling her young. No response. A few moments later, after he tried another call, 4 tiny pups appeared. They couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. The man extended his hands, and they tentatively suckled at his fingers. Perhaps hunger had helped overcome their natural fear. Then, one by one, he placed them in a burlap bag and headed back down the slope. When the mother wolf spotted him, she stood erect. Possibly picking up the scent of her young, she let out a high-pitched, plaintive whine. He released the pups, and they raced to her. Within seconds, they were slurping at her belly. What next? He wondered. The mother wolf was clearly suffering. Yet each time he moved in her direction, a menacing growl rumbled in her throat. With her young to protect, she was becoming belligerent. She needs nourishment, he thought. The man had to find her something to eat. He hiked toward Coho Creek and spotted the leg of a deceased deer sticking out of a snowbank. He cut off a hind quarter, then returned the remains to nature's icebox. Toting the venison haunch back to the wolf, he whispered in a soothing tone, "Okay, mother, your dinner is served. But only if you stop growling at me. Come on, now. Easy." He tossed chunks of venison in her direction. She sniffed them, then gobbled them up. Cutting hemlock boughs, he fashioned a rough shelter for himself and was soon asleep nearby. At dawn, he was awakened by 4 fluffy bundles of fur sniffing at his face and hands. He glanced toward the agitated mother wolf. The man thought if he could only win her confidence, as it was her only hope. Over the next few days, he divided his time between prospecting and trying to win the wolf's trust. He talked gently with her, threw her more venison, and played with the pups. Little by little, he kept edging closer, though he was careful to remain beyond the length of her chain. The big animal never took her dark eyes off me. "Come on, mother," he pleaded. "You want to go back to your friends on the mountain. Relax." At dusk on the 5th day, he delivered her daily fare of venison. "Here's dinner," he said softly as I approached. "Come on, girl. Nothing to be afraid of." Suddenly, the pups came bounding to me. At least he had their trust. But he was beginning to lose hope of ever winning over the mother. Then he thought he saw a slight wagging of her tail. He moved within the length of her chain. She remained motionless. His heart in his mouth, he sat down 8 feet from her. One snap of her huge jaws and she could break my arm or my neck. He wrapped his blanket around himself and slowly settled onto the cold ground. It was a long time before he fell asleep. He awoke at dawn, stirred by the sound of the pups nursing. Gently, he leaned over and petted them. The mother wolf stiffened. "Good morning, friends," he said tentatively. Then he slowly placed his hand on the wolf's injured leg. She flinched but made no threatening move. This can't be happening, he thought. Yet it was. He could see that the trap's steel jaws had imprisoned only 2 toes. They were swollen and lacerated, but she wouldn't lose the paw if he could free her. "Okay," he said. "Just a little longer and we'll have you out of there." He applied pressure, the trap sprang open, and the wolf pulled free. Whimpering, she loped about, favoring the injured paw. The man's experience in the wild suggested that the wolf would now gather her pups and vanish into the woods. But cautiously, she crept toward him. The pups snipped playfully at their mother as she stopped at his elbow. Slowly, she sniffed his hands and arms. Then the wolf began licking his fingers. This went against everything he had ever heard about timber wolves. Yet, strangely, it all seemed so natural. After a while, with her pups scurrying around her, the mother wolf was ready to leave and began to limp off toward the forest. Then she turned back to me. "You want me to come with you, girl?" he asked. Curious, he packed his gear and set off. Following Coho Creek for a few miles, they ascended Kupranoff Mountain until they reached an alpine meadow. There, lurking in the forested perimeter, was a wolf pack. He counted 9 adults and, judging by their playful antics, 4 nearly full-grown pups. After a few minutes of greeting, the pack broke into howling. It was a frightening sound, ranging from low wails to high-pitched yodeling. In dark, the man set up a camp. By the light of his fire and a glistening moon, he could see furtive wolf shapes dodging in and out of the shadows, eyes shining. He had no fear. They were merely curious. So was the man. He awoke at first light. It was time to leave the wolf to her pack. She watched as he assembled his gear and started walking across the meadow. Reaching the far side, he looked back. The mother and her pups were sitting where he had left them, watching me. At the same time, the mother wolf sent a long, mournful howl into the crisp air. 4 years later, after serving in World War II, he returned to Coho Creek. It was the fall of 1945. After the horrors of the battle, it was good to be back among the soaring spruce and breathing the familiar, bracing air of the Alaskan bush. Then he saw, hanging in the red cedar where he had placed it 4 years before, the now rusted steel trap that had ensnared the mother wolf. The sight of it gave him a strange feeling, and something made him climb Kupranoff Mountain to the meadow where he had last seen her. There, standing on a lofty ledge, he gave out a long, low wolf call, something he had done many times before. An echo came back across the distance. Again he called. And again the echo reverberated, this time followed by a wolf call from a ridge about a half-mile away. Then, far off, he saw a dark shape moving slowly in my direction. As it crossed the meadow, he could see it was a timber wolf. A chill spread through his whole body. He knew at once that familiar shape, even after 4 years. "Hello, old girl," he called gently. The wolf edged closer, ears erect, body tense, and stopped a few yards off, her bushy tail wagging slightly. Moments later, the wolf was gone. He left Kupranoff Island a short time after that, and he never saw the animal again. But the memory she left with him was vivid, haunting, a little crazy, and will always be there. It is a reminder that there are things in nature that exist outside the laws and understanding of man.